Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to another broadcast with Sierra Cast TV. And let's talk about it. And we're discussing mental health today. My name is Wilhelmina Alima to Alan, a community activist. And we frequently discuss community issues or social issues here on this platform. Today, I have Reverend Mrs. Doretha Jackson that is with me. She will be joining me in the conversation about mental health. So, welcome everyone. It's been a little bit. Happy belated Mother's Day to all the moms out there. We were expecting to do a Mother's Day discussion, and hoping everyone is having a blessed mental health awareness month and doing their best not to de stress, finding days or ways to relax. And then, of course, finding things that stress you and finding ways to cope with that stress or avoid that stress. So, I want to start the conversation with Ms. Dorita. And of course, first and foremost, I want to define what is mental health, right? So, what is mental health? Mental health is like physical health, right? It's a category of health that caters to the balance between emotional and mental wellness and illnesses, right? Because we have mental illnesses that some people may be diagnosed with. Okay, it includes the mental health management skills we need to, of course, cope with stresses of life, things that cause us anxiety, things that anything that causes any kind of fluctuation with your emotions can be considered stress. Okay. Your life and work productivity, and creating a healthy social relationship with your support systems, whether that's your family, whether that's friends, whether it's working partners in your relationships outside of family, or just whether it's just within yourself, right? I want to talk to, or let's start the discussion with Ms. Doretha. On what has she experienced in regards to mental health in the community.
Thank you, Alima, for inviting me once again. It's always a joy to be here. Every topic and to just be a part of this is indeed a blessing. I'll just dive right in. One of the a lot of the challenges and the barriers that I find in mental health is understanding what mental health is. And you gave a description of what mental health is and the effects that it can have on our lives. One of the things, without mental health, there is no physical health. And we neglect health because of the stigmas. We neglect ourselves. We neglect mental health is neglected and unnoticed and unspoken about because of the many stigmas. And it's similar to, if you have cancer, we all look at if you have all look at uh, treatments for it. We put a lot of attention on the person that's dealing with cancer. But when we're dealing with anxiety or schizophrenia or any other of eating disorders, even alcoholism, when we're dealing with some of those challenges, we don't even address it because we don't know how to address it, and we don't look for a cure or treatment for it, and what is very necessary. So what I found is, particularly in the Black community, it goes back to generations. It goes back to, again, lack of education, a lack of awareness, and lack of understanding, and being embarrassed and being ashamed of it, being a product of myself, being a product of coming from that has mental illness in our background. Um, it was stigmatized, and it was whatever happens here stays here. Whatever happens to a person, we don't talk about it. And in their mind, there's this mindset that if we don't talk about it, it doesn't exist. Or if we don't talk about it and we just ignore it, it will go away. And that's what we have a tendency to do with things that we do not understand. But the issue is now that we're starting to raise awareness more about mental health. I think everywhere you look now, we're talking about health. We're talking about it in our schools. We're talking about it in college. We're talking about it now in our churches. We're talking about it in our homes now. We're learning to have the conversation because we continuously are raising awareness about it and learning about the stigmas. Platforms such as this one, Alima, it's a way of raising awareness and bringing it to the forefront.
Much, Mr. Rita. I think one of the most important aspects that we're dealing with right now, post pandemic, or while we're in like this middle plateau level of the pandemic, is that there's a lot of things that have occurred and people need to deal with it or talk about it, from grief to isolation to all these, whether it's financial depression or emotional depression that we're dealing with, because people are now coming out and we having to now socialize, or people are afraid to come out and socialize or be around people. So being able to talk about it, and coming from a community that truly believes in not talking about things and just like let it go or forgive and forget. I know Islam teaches us to forgive and forget, but sometimes it's really important to talk about it, because you don't know the impact of your actions on somebody. And it's important that we talk about it so you can learn from that experience or that occasion, so it will not happen again, right? It's really important
Right,
for us to learn lessons, right? Teachable moments,
right.
that's what I call those
Hmm.
moments. So if we don't talk
Exactly.
about it, then you don't know, right?
Right.
And then the
And
cycle
ignoring
continues.
right. And ignoring it is not going to make it go away. Ignoring it is it's not going
Exactly.
to if we just put it on the back burner, it's not going to make the situation, or even it's not a solution to our problem. Let's learn about it, and so that we'll be able to address it. We do not have to be professionals in our field to learn and be aware. We There are so many resources that we can use for ourselves, that we can better equip ourselves. We don't even have to have a mental illness to get involved, because mental health is all of our business. Because at some point or another in our lives, we're going to encounter someone who's dealing with mental illness, whether it's at work, in the supermarket, whether in the train going to work, or in our homes, in our church, or in our places of worship. We're going to encounter someone who's having a mental issue or a mental crisis, and we want to be prepared rather than stigmatize or run away from that person. It's best to educate yourself with some of the resources, and hopefully we'll get to talk about some of that and how we can prepare ourselves to meet the masses.
It's, I mean, one of the things I think that is really important for us to just put out there today is to educate yourself if you don't know, or seek help, ask questions. I'm big on asking questions. Why, who, what, when, how. It's really important for us to ask questions, because when you ask questions, then you become educated on that topic or that issue or whatever it is might be going on in that environment. But if you don't, then you stay dormant, or you don't have a solution or an answer, or a way to kind of help yourself through it. So please, everyone, if something's going on that is not your normal self, if you're stressed, if you're experiencing any kind of anxiety, or anything that is not your normal self, seek help, right? Ask questions. That's the best way to reduce stigma. Okay. as we continue on with Miss Dorita, I think it's really important for us to know what we Miss Dorita has a conversation that she does weekly, and she brought up what self awareness was. So, Miss Dorita, can you please share with the audience what is self awareness, so then people know when they're having some sort of a mental health issue?
Okay, well, self awareness is knowing about yourself, knowing when something is wrong, when we're starting to feel inadequate about a situation, when we're starting to feel inadequate about ourselves, when we start to feel uncomfortable when we're in a certain environment, when we're just not uncomfortable with ourselves. Some people have a tendency to not want to be alone. We always have to have people around us, even if they're unhealthy people, even if they're unhealthy relationship. Being aware of yourself is having an understanding that I need to remove myself out of harm's way. I need to be able to be so in tune with myself that when something is not right, I'm able to hear myself and say, hey, I'm not able to shake this sadness. I feel anxious when I go in a crowd of people. There are triggers. There's something that triggers an event that took place in my life that was very tragic, and now I realize it's a spiraling, a rippling effect. When we don't take the time to take care of ourselves, when we don't take time out to be aware of just slowing down and taking a day for ourselves, we're moving out of self-awareness, and we have as even as mothers, we have a tendency of taking on the role of everything, even though some of us may have a partner within the household or a spouse in the household that it's the it's helping, but we as mothers, we're naturally nurturers, so we have a tendency to take care of everything: the children, our husband, our spouse, our significant other, our neighbors, our parents. We take care of everything. We neglect ourselves. Are no good to anyone unless we take care of ourselves, and that's being aware of self. That's taking the time. Am I in a right mental space? And also we have to understand that it's okay to not be okay. And if we're not okay, we have to learn to speak out. A neighbor, or even a healthcare giver, someone, your doctor, your therapist, or a social worker. Um, there are so many resources that we can tune and tap into. That we can join a support group. We host a support group. It's open to everyone every first and third Thursday virtually, and I all of that information, Alima, and you're welcome to join that. And we cover so many topics about self-awareness, self-care, mental health. We talk about what it looks like, what it doesn't look like, what are some of the stigmas, and how we stigmatize ourselves. So being aware of ourselves is extremely important, and understanding where we are mentally, where we are physically, know when to take out, know when to listen to our bodies, know when to be able to tune in and take a time out. I had answered the question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Dorita. That was excellent. We do have a question from the audience on what reason could it possibly be that people are afraid to speak up and seek help? And I don't think it's necessarily in regards to how people will project them, but it's more of confidentiality. I think not everyone wants everybody talking about their business. For me, actually, I don't care, right? If I tell you my business and you decide to go speak what I tell you to someone else, it shows me the kind of person that you are, right? It shows me that you're not trustworthy, first and foremost, and it shows me that you're not really genuinely a friend to me. But if you and I have a conversation and you're talking to me and you're giving me advice that you would want to give yourself, then I know then you are somebody I can take as a confidant, right? But when we're talking about mental health, we're talking about seeking professional help, someone that's a licensed counselor, someone that's a licensed therapist, in the hospital, clinician. That's what we're really here to discuss, that you may need to seek someone that is professionally licensed or a clinician that can assist you and teach you steps or ways for you to overcome whatever challenge or difficulty that there are, right? So never be afraid to seek help. If you decide to seek help from a family member or a friend, or even sometimes a religious figure, and you entrust them with whatever personal matter you're going through, then it's up to them to find you help, right? It's up to them to give you that resource, for you to find someone that can assist you, that has that professional experience. So for me personally, I don't think it's because of people's reaction. I think it's just the lack of knowledge on who to go to, or perhaps the person that they're talking to is not somebody that's trustworthy.
I absolutely agree. One of the things that I just want to also add before I go into that statement, piggyback off what you said, there are extensions also to mental health professionals, such as mental health coaches. Such myself has been our mental health coach. We're not counselors, we're not therapists, but we do the basics where we're able to give you some basic information, and if and to help you come up with a plan best to better get the recovery. If we feel that it needs to go further beyond that, then we refer you to a professional within your area. But absolutely, one of the main components for mental health is when you go to talk with someone is trust. The person that you're talking to, you pretty much have to make sure that you who you choose to share with, you want to make sure that that person themselves is in a better headspace, um, and someone that kind of understand, that has empathy, that has compassion, that know that they have integrity, because the goal is to help you. I'm not going to be any help if you come to me and you're pouring out your heart to me, and I go and I share it with the entire community. So that tells me that I have no integrity when it comes to that. So that you're going to hurt yourself, harm someone else, then I'm at liberty to share that. But I wouldn't share that with just anyone. I would share that with a professional that's going to get you help, and I would explain that to you. But to just, if you shared with me, hey D, I don't know what it is, but I become very anxious when I'm out. What is that? Or I can't shake the sadness, or I have suicidal thoughts. This is where we don't go and tell everyone. This is where we take a moment to see what we can do to get the help that you need. So be very mindful and wise when you are inclined to share. And the goal is to get yourself to a point where you're not ashamed of your mental illness. Again, mental illness is Eddie's business, but everyone understands the importance of confidentiality, and not everyone would know what to do. So this is where we have to use our sense of discernment to know who to share with. And if you're in a faith-based community, the best person to use is a faith-based leader, or a prominent person that's
Right.
within the community, someone in the medical field, you can even share with your primary care physician, then give you some resource. Social worker. So there are so many. Froze. I think I froze. Can you hear?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, there are so many resources. We even have, if you go to your local hospital, every hospital now today in this day and time, if it don't, then I would go to your
Yes, they
mayor's
do.
office and I would advocate and demand that that hospital have a behavioral science unit.
Yep.
Every hospital now has a behavioral science department, and go to the emergency room and they will direct you to that department. Many hospitals now, and this is one of the things that really bothers me, is a lot, especially in the Black communities, they don't use these resources, but you have a lot of behavioral science that will come to your home. They will come to where you are to service you, to you, help you with the plan, and not necessarily and to triage, to assess to see if you need long-term or short-term care, if you need to be admitted for a few days. But these are resources that's out there, but we have to be proactive and access them. There are a lot of churches now, which my husband and I advocate a lot for, where we are. There's mental health. There's a program that you can participate in, mental health first aid, and leaders in the local churches take advantage of this mental health first aid, where they can now help service the people in the community. So you can go to a local church, and it's not about your faith or your beliefs. It's about going somewhere that's accessible and within you to get the help that you need. A lot of organizations within your community that host counseling. It just happened to be housed in a church that does Anonymous, Addicts Anonymous, and all of those other programs, grief support groups, mental health support groups. There are so many avenues and so many resources that we can access now, and where you can come and open up and talk and be guided to get the help that you need, because it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay where you are and do nothing about it.
Exactly. And we have a lot of mental health cases in the news currently, from shootings to people doing outrageous things, whether it's in the subways or on planes or on moving vehicles, transportation. It's really important for us
Mhm.
to talk about things. It's really important for you to know the right people to talk about with. So just be mindful and cognizant. Like, sometimes you may need to go to a professional than a family friend, or um, you know, a cousin or an uncle, or sometimes your mom and dad. They may not be able to give you the right guidance, or sometimes even you might just need somebody to genuinely listen, retain that information, and just give you some guidance. So just remember that it's all about what you really need, not necessarily who you talk to, but what you need as far as what you're going to get back from that conversation. Um, just moving on, because this is really a short discussion. We don't want to keep
Right.
repeating the same things for you, but can we just point out just a few things, Mr. Rita, on what to look for when someone may need to seek counseling, or may need to seek some help professionally, whether it's depression, anxiety. Some people are diagnosed with maybe bipolarism. So what are some things that they can look for, some signs that they might need to seek some professional help?
When detachment, person from their loved ones, when a person decides to start to lose, pay attention to their sleep patterns. If they're asleep and tired all of the time, they're if you find a person that's being active and they're no longer active, um, irritability, um, restless and sleeplessness. Sometimes it can sleep too much, and sometimes you have someone says, "Well, I haven't slept in the past 48 hours. I haven't slept for two going on 2 days." That is definitely a sign. What that is, it could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be bipolar, it could be anything. It's not for us to determine, but it's for a physician. um, but the detachment is the most, when they start to distance themselves from society or from individuals, when their work pattern starts to when they start to take days off, and when they're taking those days off, they're sleeping the whole time or just isolated. So these are some of the things. Their eating pattern, their eating habits will change. They're either eating too much or not eating enough or not eating at all. Weight gain or weight loss. These are all things that we can see their behavior will start to change. And when we see that, don't think it's that they're just going through a moment, but it's a time to go to that individual, not in a judgmental way, but to say, hey, I notice things are, and we have to also be careful with our language. I notice that you don't seem yourself. I'm concerned. Is everything okay? Or I don't think everything's okay with you. What's going on? And let's approach it and put them in a position where they are forced to say, well, I haven't been sleeping and I don't know why. You know what? Maybe we should go to the doctor, and I'll go with you if you need me to. Um, Sometimes people are more inclined to go to their physician than they will going to a therapist, especially if they're not open to therapy right away. But it is a good way to start with suggesting that they go to a doctor. If the individual is okay with speaking to, you can say, well, I don't, I'm concerned. So maybe we can always use we, because we want the individual to know that I'm here for you and you have a support system to help you get through this. So maybe we can go and talk to a counselor. It sounds like some of the things I was watching this program or I was reading the magazine. Maybe you're having some psychical issues, but nothing major. Maybe we should just go. It's not going to hurt to go and talk to a social worker or a counselor. What do you think about that? And we can go together. And that, but once the signs, we should never ignore them. We should always be proactive.
Thank you, Mr. Retha. I just want us to wrap up with our segment. Is there anything that you would like to advise the community on what to do as far as how to seek help or who to talk to when they initially want to talk or communicate or seek help?
I would say to start with a support group, because sometimes when we try to go one on one with a counselor, we may feel inadequate. So I would definitely start with a support group. Um, and you can find them in your local community. Again, I can give Alima some of my information, and I give her some resources for the area that you're targeting, that you're in. Always talk about it. Don't be ashamed of it. Confront it. Own it. And there's nothing to be ashamed of. We have cancer, when we have diabetes, we have hypertension, high cholesterol, a broken leg. We tell the world, pray for me because my cholesterol is up. Pray for me, I have cancer. So it just, we're not ashamed of that. So why be ashamed of mental illness? Mental illness
Exactly.
is nothing
A
to
great
be
point.
ashamed of. So once we get past that, understand, the shame in it is when we stay in it and don't receive the help that's necessary. But my recommendation to start with a support group. After you start with a support group, if it depends on the magnitude of it, definitely be willing to talk with someone, a faith-based leader, a community leader like Alima, um, of if you're in heavily involved in church, talk with your pastor or your rabbi, your imam. Talk with someone that that has a leadership status within your community or your church. You can also talk with your doctor. If you feel your family member understand, be honest and transparent with your family member and come up with a plan together. But the goal is to always be willing to talk, confront it, and get help. Help is so essential. But the more you talk about it, the better you become to understand it. The more you become aware, read information. Psychology.com. There are so many resources. If you go into your Google and you just type in mental health, help for mental health, so plethora of organizations will come up and give you all kinds of information that you need. But this continues yourself.
Awesome, thank you. For New Jersey, there's a National Alliance for Mental Illness. That number is 732-940-0991. If you go on Google and you search for the National Alliance for Mental Illness, um, .org, they will give you the information for your state and your localities. So it's not just New Jersey; it's for the United States. They will give you your specific locality, the contact information, whomever you can talk to in order for them to give you the correct resources. And I'm pretty sure most insurances have websites or a hotline that you can call. There's even free hotlines that you can call in order to talk about any kind of crisis situation you may be having, whether it's mental illness, depression, suicide. And we've shared that before, and I'll gladly have Hamjat post it with the video, so that you have it. It's really important to definitely talk. I'm a talker, so if I'm comfortable, we're talking, because you never know who you talk to that might be able to give you the right suggestion or guidance, or just give you their own story of how they overcome maybe the same situation. Most of our lives are in alignment, right? Most of us are mothers, most of us are fathers, or we have a mom, or we have a dad, or we've had somebody in our family that impacts us greatly. So just remember, sometimes when you're having a conversation with someone, they can share their story, that can help guide you on your path of life, right? So it's really important. Don't be afraid to speak. Don't be afraid to speak up, and don't be afraid to ask questions. It's important for us to do so. We were going to have another speaker here today who has human resources a background, so we're going to talk a little bit more about work, mental health. So please, everyone, look forward to for us to have Ms. Amaria Fakindale on here from Neuron Cakes. I'm so pleased to have Ms. Doretha on with us today to discuss mental health, and of course my kids in the background. It's always a pleasure talking with everyone in the community. Please don't be shy to speak up when you are going through something. And I'm always available for a chat or to refer you to any resource that I know of in order to help find you the help that you need. Everyone, please be blessed. As always, we thank Hamjat here on Sierra Cast TV for allowing us to do these discussions to keep the community informed and aware. Us being in a Black community, just our traditional roots. It's not to talk about our problems, but things are changing and are evolving, and we want our kids to grow up in better, happier, and healthier environments. So let's talk about these problems so we can get them to end these cycles that don't need to continue. All right. It was a pleasure this evening. As always, we thank you all for joining us, and have a good
Bye.
evening.
Thank you.